Hey, welcome back to That 70s Card Show. I'm your host, John Keating, and I thank you for joining me as I take a look back at the cards and the culture of the very colorful 1980s. We'll revisit a more simple time in our hobby by taking a deep dive into the sets and the stats with a generous amount of dad facts sprinkled in. Of course, That 70s Card Show is sponsored by nobody. If you have a comment or suggestion, drop me a line at that70scardshow@gmail.com. 70s Card on Twitter, or That 70s Card Show over there on YouTube. You may have heard me say the 1980s. Here I am caving into peer pressure. Certain gentleman has cornered me now twice, uh, two different card shows in two different states, and insisted that I start diving into the 1980s. Of course, I prefer to be considering myself the quintessential product of the 70s, but of course, many of my formative years were happened in the 1980s. Certainly, sports changed again in the 80s as they did in the 70s, and our hobby saw its probably biggest shift ever in how we collect, what we collect, and later on in the decade, much to my chagrin, why we collect in some regards. So, 1980 was a big year. I consider it the final epic year of vintage baseball cards. I have a T-shirt that proves it. I'll hold that up right now. Um, 1980 plus earlier equals vintage. Some of my friends and colleagues in the war for vintage wear that proudly, and I appreciate that. If you feel like you might want one of those shirts, you can reach out to me. We'll see what we can do. Maybe we can work out a trade. You can sell your soul to the 1980 plus earlier crowd and wear one of those at your next card show, or perhaps to cover up uh, your bits and pits at your next beach outing. 1980, of course. Why am I delving into that again? Certain gentlemen, as I said, um, insists I dive into that. There's so much to uncover in the 80s. I'm not promising him or anyone else that I will go hard in the 80s, but 1980, of course, needs to be discussed for many reasons. So, Bobby Baseball, this is for you. Hopefully, hopefully it's enough to wet your beak, as they say. 1980 was a big year personally for me when it comes to my sporting fanaticism. Many of us will remember, of course, February 22nd, 1980, the 1980 Lake Placid Olympics. USA in the semifinals beating the professional, a bunch of college kids beating the professional Russian Army team uh, to get to the gold medal game a few days later, and of course, win the gold medal. I believe that was against Sweden. Miracle on ice is what they called it. And Al Michaels was kind of brought into our lives and never quite left. I think he's still hovering around there. We hear him probably on a weekly basis. A lot going on in the world as well. We'll cover some of that with our dad facts. As I promised, a generous amount of dad facts will not be sprinkled in, but poured in here, pretty hard and heavy here in a minute. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what happened in the 1980s. I'll go by here. 1980, of course, was a leap year, and it started on a Tuesday, according to Wikipedia. I'll be quoting stuff from Wikipedia, Baseball Almanac, TCDB, Beckett, Baseball Card, Pedia, and some things I saw on a bathroom wall as well at Costco today. The 1980th year of the Common Era, known as the CE, Anno Domini, as we say over there as well, 980th year of the second millennium, the 80th year of the 20th century, and the first year of the 1980s decade. Of course, the 20th century was, of course, a wonderful, wonderful time to be a card collector, and still is. People are going way, way back in the 20th century and picking out those cards. January 26th, we talk about world events, Israel and Egypt. of course, established diplomatic relations, big deal back then in the late 70s, Camp David Agreement. February 2nd, app scam. The FBI's targeted members of the Congress and in a sting operation. And by golly, we found out there were some crooked people in Washington, which may have surprised many. Again, February 13th, the Winter Olympics did open in Lake Placid, and we talked about February 22nd and the Miracle on Ice. That would be I guess we beat Finland. So for those of you who are typing away right now, it says we beat Finland to secure our first and only gold medal since 1960 in Olympic hockey. So you can delete all that right now. March 8th, the Soviet Union had its first rock musical festival. I was not there, but boy, that would have been fun. March 21st, the season finale of Dallas on CBS. J.R. Ewing is shot by an unseen assailant leading to the catchphrase, "Who shot J.R.?" And also on March 21st, Jimmy Carter, who was then the president of the United States, announced that that the United States would boycott the Summer Olympics in 1980 in Moscow because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. If only Afghanistan had access to the Princess Bride and been aware that you cannot win a ground war in Asia, then maybe everything would have been different, but maybe not. That brings us to April 5th. Hawaii Five-0 airs its season finale on CBS. April 7th, United States severs diplomatic relations with Iran and imposes economic sanctions following the taking of American hostages on November 4th, 1979. That was a huge thing for many, many months, that stretched a very long period of time, and we were fascinated with that as Americans. There, again, a lot going on in 1980, and we'll find out some more about that crisis as we read on here. Iron Maiden debuted their self-titled album, Iron Maiden, which contained the song Iron Maiden, on April 14th, 1980. Of course, they call that 14th of April over there across the pond. April 24th and 25th, Operation Eagle Claw, a commando mission in Iran to rescue American embassy hostages, is aborted in the Iranian desert due to mechanical problems that grounded the rescue helicopters. 8 United States troops are killed in a midair collision during the failed operation. Why do I bring this up? Mark Bowden wrote an incredible book called Guest of the Ayatollah that kind of highlighted all this stuff. It's an amazing book. And more importantly, Mark Bowden is a wonderful sports writer. Wrote a book about the Eagles, bringing the heat, I think they call it. And then he wrote a book about I believe the 58 championship Colts versus Giants, maybe, at the Polo Grounds that pretty much kickstarted football on a national level here in the United States. Let's see here. April 29th, the NFL draft is televised for the first time on ESPN. Also on the 29th of April, CBS broadcasts Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals between the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Islanders. The Saturday afternoon game is the first full American network telecast of an NHL game since Game 5 of the 1975 Stanley Cup Finals, which aired on NBC, and the last NHL game on an American network television until NBC televises the 1990 All-Star Game. So we talk about cards of the hockey variety getting a bum rap, maybe in the hobby, but this also tells you that they went 5 years between televising games live, and then another 10 years before televising games live again on network TV in the U.S. Strange bird that hockey is, but certainly generated some wonderful cards in the 50s, 60s, and 70s for sure. Paul Guidel is convicted on May 7th of second-degree murder in 1911, it says. Let's backtrack here. On May 7th, Paul Guidel, convicted of second-degree murder in 1911, is released from prison in Beacon, New York, after 68 years and 245 days, the longest ever time served by an inmate. Boy, that's pretty macabre and depressing. May 8th, global eradication of smallpox is certified by the World Health Organization. I don't believe that. May 11th, Vanna White makes her first appearance on a game show via The Price is Right, in which she was among the first 4 contestants. She did not make it on stage, but the clip of her running to Contestants Row was rebroadcast as part of The Price is Right 25th anniversary special in 1996. I probably could have skipped over that. May 18th, the eruption of Mount St. Helens volcano kills 57 people and causes $3 billion in damage. That was a pretty big deal as well. The big top blowing off Mount St. Helens. May 22nd, Namco's Pac-Man, the highest earning arcade game of all time, is released in Japan. Pac-Man, Pac-Person is what they would call that today, I'm sure. June 1st, the first 24-hour news channel, cable news network, is launched. I'm not sure how that's going. June 23rd, big point in my life, and that is David Letterman's show debuts on NBC. Letterman's humor does not go over well with a morning audience, and the show is canceled in October. Letterman would stay at NBC and go on to host a late night show on the network 2 years later. I remember breaking my wrist in 1980, and part of my recovery was the joy of watching David Letterman in the morning that summer. It was a morning show, and absolutely, I was hooked from the get-go, and I spent many, many years being an adherent of David Letterman, and still think to this day he's one of the funniest people that I've ever heard. Let's see here. June 23rd, also, Tim Berners-Lee begins work on Enquire. That's Enquire, the system that will eventually lead to the creation of the World Wide Web in the autumn of 1990. World Wide Web, of course, has brought many of us together in this hobby and made our hobby a more wonderful place to acquire friends as well as acquire cards. So thank you, Tim Berners-Lee, and your work has not gone unnoticed. We appreciate that. Also, Jimmy Carter signs Proclamation 4771, requiring 18 to 25-year-old males to register for a peacetime military draft in response to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, those rascals. July 16th, former California governor and actor Ronald Reagan is nominated for U.S. president at the 1980 Republican National Convention in Detroit. July 19th, August 3rd, the aforementioned 1980 Summer Olympics are held in Moscow, Soviet Union, as 82 countries boycott the games. Athletes from 16 of them participate under a neutral flag. August 7th to 31st, Lech Walesa leads the first of many strikes at the Gdansk shipyard in the Polish People's Republic. That was also a big deal back then. The Iron Curtain was starting to pop a few rivets here and there. September 30th, Digital Equipment Corporation, Intel, and Xerox produce the DIX standard for Ethernet. That's DIX, which is the first implementation outside of Xerox and the first to support 10 megabit speeds. If you're a computer nerd, I'm sure that means a lot, but doesn't mean much to me. October 4th, Bob Costas makes his debut calling Major League Baseball games for NBC. It was a backup game. The primary game involved the Phillies and Montreal Expos, but Costas got the Yankees and Detroit Tigers from Yankee Stadium. Let's see here. November 4th, the 1980 United States presidential election, Republican challenger and former Governor Ronald Reagan of California defeats incumbent Democrat President Jimmy Carter and is elected the 40th president of the United States. November 21st, a fire at MGM Grand Hotel and Casino on the Vegas Strip kills 85 people. That would lead to a lot of changes in the fire extinguisher laws, of course. Also that day, a record number of viewers on this date, at least for an entertainment program, tune in to the U.S. television show Dallas to learn who shot lead character J.R. Ewing. And the Who Shot J.R. event is an international obsession. November 22nd, Eddie Murphy makes his first Saturday Night Live appearance, appearing in a non-speaking role in the sketch In Search of the Negro Republican. And of course, December 8th, another pivotal moment in history, cultural history, was the murder of John Lennon. Mark David Chapman arrested following the murder of English musician John Lennon, formerly of the Beatles, outside his New York City apartment in Dakota. Many heard that news broken by Howard Cosell on Monday Night Football. I don't quite think the world has recovered from that. So finishing out December 20th, NBC Sports broadcast the New York Jets 24-17 season-ending victory over the Miami Dolphins without announcers. The only time that has ever been done with an NFL game. That was a pretty big deal. I remember that. No broadcasters happening, just a lot of chyron popping up on screen to tell you what down it was and all that stuff. Date unknown. The Right Livelihood Award is founded by Jacob von Uexkall, Hassan Fathi, and Plenty International. Steve Gaskin are its first winners. I have no idea what that meant. World population 1980, 4.434682 billion people. Pretty big world we had there. Let's see here. Nobel Prize. Nobody cares about that. Let's keep flipping here if we can. I'm doing this without glasses, which is pretty amazing. January 29th, Jimmy Durante dies. February 19th, Bon Scott, lead singer of the Scottish band, Scottish-Australian band, AC/DC, passes away. Jesse Owens died on March 31st, 1980. Alfred Hitchcock, April 29th. Peter Sellers, July 24th. September 25th, John Bonham passed away, of course, the greatest right foot in rock and roll history. Steve McQueen died November 7th. Mae West, November 22nd. John Lennon, of course, December 8th. Colonel Sanders died December 16th. And Karl Donitz, who was the final president of Germany at the end of World War II, passed away on Christmas Eve, 1980. Goodbye, Carl. Good riddance is more like it, right? Let's see here. We'll talk a little bit about sports here. American football, January 20th, 1980, the Steelers beat the Los Angeles Rams 31-19. Sort of kind of a home game. It was at the Rose Bowl, and the Rams were playing at the Coliseum back in the day. 103,000 people attended that game. MVP was Terry Bradshaw, and of course, it would bring an end to the great Steelers teams of the 70s. It was their fourth and final there in, I believe it was 6 years, with the Cowboys and Vikings winning in between. Crimson Tide won 24-19 over the Arkansas Razorbacks to claim the college football national championship. And on December 21st, the New Orleans Saints became the first ever 1-15 team. West Germany beat Belgium to win the European Championship in soccer. Of course, there was a West Germany and East Germany, a GDR and a DDR back then. Let's talk a little bit about baseball in a broad sense. Gary Ward became the sixth Minnesota Twins player on September 18th to hit for the cycle. The Twins lose 9-8 to the Milwaukee Brewers, wasting Ward's effort. On May 26, 2004, his son Darrell Ward would repeat the feat, guiding the Pirates to an 11-8 victory over the Cardinals. Ward joined his father to become the first father-son combination in Major League history to hit for the cycle. Raleigh Fingers broke Hoyt Wilhelm's Major League record of 250 saves. 1980 World Series, of course, the Philadelphia Phillies won their first World Championship in the 97 years or 98 years of their existence, beating the Royals 4-2. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Sadaharu O retired from the Yomiuri Giants as the all-time professional baseball home run king. NBA Finals, great time to be a Philadelphian, but the Lakers win 4-2 over the 76ers. That game is famous for, or that series famous for Magic Johnson's rookie year and him having to play center when Kareem went out with a blister on his thumb or something. And they wore some weird uniforms because the uniforms got stolen. That stuff is never happens in Philadelphia, but apparently it happened that night. Another tragedy, March 14th to the 22nd, members of the United States Olympic boxing team died in a plane crash near Warsaw, Poland. That was certainly a tragedy. The U.S. boxing team for several years had been absolutely incredible. Of course, I remember 76. 76 was a monster year, Olympics for the U.S. boxing team. June 20th, Roberto Duran defeats Sugar Ray Leonard by a 15-round decision to win boxing's WBC World Welterweight title. Thomas Hearns defeats Jose Pepino Cuevas by knockout in round 2 to win the boxing's WA World Welterweight title. And Yusutuni Yahira knocks out Samuel Serrano in the 6th round to win the WBA's World Junior Lightweight title in Detroit. Aaron Pryor defeats Antonio Cervantes at one point to win the welterweight title. Larry Holmes defeats Muhammad Ali on October 2nd by a knockout in round 11 to retain his world heavyweight championship. That would be Ali's last world title bout. And on November 25th, in the No Mas fight in New Orleans, Sugar Ray Leonard recovers his WBC's World Welterweight Championship with an 8-round technical knockout of Roberto Duran. And if you're thinking that I'm forgetting about our friends up north, the Grey Cup was won by the Eskimos from Edmonton, 48-10 over the Hamilton Tiger Cats up there north of the border. Senior PGA founded in 1980. Jack Nicklaus is your U.S. Open winner. British Open goes to Tom Watson. Jack Nicklaus wins the PGA, and the Masters goes to Seve Ballesteros. In ice hockey, the New York Islanders, as we said, defeated the Philadelphia Flyers, and the United States hockey team, of course, beat the Soviet Union. That's about it for sports in general. If you care, Arthur Ashe retired from competitive tennis, and Herrick Heiden won many Olympic gold medals in the 1980 Olympics. Yacht racing, no one cares. The ABC's Wild World of Sports Athlete of the Year was the U.S. Olympic Hockey Team, and Female Athlete of the Year, according to the Associated Press, was Chris Everett. Let's talk a little bit about baseball in 1980. That's why we're all here. Of course, the world champions, Philadelphia Phillies, 4-2. I was at Game 1 of that World Series. I still have my ticket. I still have my program signed by Brian Gumbel. And still love to tell people that Bob Walk was the starting pitcher that night. The Amateur World Series champion was Cuba that year. College World Series, Arizona. In the Japan Series, the Hiroshima Toyo Carp beat the Kanetsu's Buffaloes 4-3. Little League World Series was won by Taiwan. There was a time when Taiwan would absolutely dominate the Little League World Series. Hall of Fame inductees in 1980 were Al Kaline, Chuck Klein, Duke Snyder, and Tom Yawkey. We will probably talk a little bit about that later on. Your MVPs, AL, would be George Brett, deservedly so, and Mike Schmidt, NL. George Brett had a great season. Talk a little bit about that later on. Cy Young went to Steve Stone in the American League and Steve Carlton in the National League. Joe Charbonneau, who we'll learn a little bit more about later on, was the AL Rookie of the Year, and Steve Howe, the NL Rookie of the Year. Women Executive of the Year was Frances Crockett. Didn't know that was a thing, but she was with the Charlotte Orioles in the Southern League. Your Gold Glovers, well, I don't think we want to talk about that, but some good ones over there in the American League. Cecil Cooper, Frank White, Buddy Bell, Alan Trammell, Willie Wilson, Fred Lynn, Dwayne Murphy, Jim Sudberg, and Mike Norris. Your division winners, the Yankees, 103 games, won. That's 3 games ahead of the 100-game winner, Baltimore Orioles. In the West Division there, 97 games. The Kansas City Royals were 14 games ahead of the Oakland A's, who barely cracked 500 with 83 wins. Over in the National League, the Phillies won their division by exactly 1 baseball game over the Expos. That went down to the final series in Montreal at the end of the year. Houston Astros had to play a playoff game with the Dodgers to get into the NLCS. So essentially they won that division by 1 game. Now let's talk about some really, really fun stuff in 1980 in baseball. Okay. I got a document here, and this is quite a fun ride. So stick with me. Eventually we'll talk about baseball cards. I promise you. So we talked about Kaline and Snyder getting into the Hall of Fame. Kaline is the 10th player to be elected in his first year of eligibility, while Snyder made his 11th appearance on the ballot. So some things never change. January 24th, the Mets are sold to a group headed by Nelson Doubleday Jr. and Fred Wilpon for an estimated $21.1 million. It was, at the time, the highest amount ever paid for an American professional sports franchise. January 31st, Joe Morgan leaves the Cincinnati Reds and signs with the Houston Astros as a free agent. Returning to the city, his major league career began. February 12th, the board of the Oakland Coliseum and the Oakland City Council both reject an attempt to buy out the remainder of the Athletics lease to the stadium. This blocks an attempt to sell the team and possible move to Denver. Folks from Oakland, again, some things never change. February 15th, the San Diego Padres acquire first baseman Willie Montanez from the Texas Rangers in exchange for infielder Tucker Ashford, minor leaguer Joe Carroll, and future Hall of Famer Gaylord Perry. Montanez was a wonderful man to watch come up to the plate and a wonderful first baseman. He certainly was not worth Gaylord Perry in a trade. March 8th, rookie Joe Charbonneau of the Cleveland Indians is attacked outside a Mexico City hotel. A fan seeking his autograph stabs him in the chest with a pen. Charbonneau misses the start of the year, but goes on to bat .289 with 23 home runs while driving in 87 runs in 131 games. Again, your AL Rookie of the Year. March 10th, the New York Yankees sign pitcher Jose Cano. The 18-year-old Cano plays only one season in the Yankees farm system before he is released and spends the next 2 seasons out of baseball. However, his son Robinson Cano would later go on to have an all-star career with the Yankees. March 12th, slugger Chuck Klein and former Boston Red Sox owner Tom Yawkey, of course, are elected to the Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee. Yawkey is the first club owner selected who never played as a player, manager, or general manager. We've heard about various owners like the Griffiths and stuff like that, or at least one of the Griffiths played baseball. So Tom Yawkey, the first non-playing owner to be elected. Sometime in April, starting opening day for the Seattle Mariners, Mike Parrott gets the win in Seattle's 8-6 win over the Toronto Blue Jays. It would be Parrott's only win of the year as he finished the season 1-16. April 10th, right fielder Sixto Lezcano blasts a grand slam home run for the Milwaukee Brewers against the Boston Red Sox on opening day in the bottom of the 9th inning to win the game, making him the first player to accomplish this feat 2 straight years. Lezcano also hit a grand slam 2 years prior on opening day. Texas Rangers starter John Matlack and New York Yankees starter Ron Guidry each pitched 9 innings of shutout baseball. The Rangers win 1-0 in the 12th inning after Goose Gossage, in his only pitch of the game, throws a wild pitch to Richie Zisk at the plate. The wild pitch allows Rangers base runner and former Yankee Mickey Rivers to score from third. April 12th, we're only in April here, folks. April 12th, the newly acquired Nolan Ryan makes his National League debut. His first National League start since 1971 for the Houston Astros. Bats in the game for the first time since 1972 and belts his first career home run, a 3-run shot in the 4th inning off Don Sutton of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Ryan only lasts 6 innings, and the Dodgers win the game 6-5 in 17 innings at the Astrodome. And I bet you they didn't need to put a runner on second base to cheat in the extra innings. April 22nd, in a slugfest in Chicago's Wrigley Field, the Cubs beat the St. Louis Cardinals 16-12 on a 2-out grand slam by Barry Foote off reliever Mark Little, I guess, in the bottom of the 9th inning. Foote drove in 8 runs overall with 4 hits and 2 homers, while teammate Ivan De Jesus went 5 for 6 and hit for the cycle to help Chicago rally from an early 12-5 deficit. April 26th of 1990, Steve Carlton, he's from Mars. He throws a 1-hitter to lead the Philadelphia Phillies over the St. Louis Cardinals. This is the 6th 1-hit game of Carlton's career, he never threw a no-hitter in his 24-year career at all. So 6 1-hitters, no no-hitters. May 3rd, William McCovey, the San Francisco Giants, hits what will be the last of 521 career home runs off Scott Sanderson of the Montreal Expos. In the 4th inning of the Giants' 3-2 victory over the Expos at Olympic Stadium, McCovey becomes the second player after Ted Williams, who also retired with 521 career home runs, to hit a home run in 4 different decades. So if you're counting 59, 60, 70, and 80. Ted Williams did it in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Ferguson Jenkins becomes the 5th pitcher in Major League history to win 100 games in both the AL and NL when he gets a decision in a 3-2 win over the Baltimore Orioles. He joins Al Orth, Cy Young, Jim Bunning, and Gaylord Perry in that exclusive club. May 11th, Pete Rose of the Philadelphia Phillies steals second base, third base, and home plate in the Phillies' 7-3 win over Cincinnati Reds. Rose was the first player since Harvey Hendrick of the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1928 to pull off the stolen base cycle in 1 inning. May 23rd, in the early hours of the morning, the MLBPA and the owners reach a preliminary agreement preventing a walkout by the players. However, the topic of free agency is tabled. an act that would lead to the player's 50-day strike the following season. Sorry, folks, I'm reading a lot here. And in May 29th at San Diego Stadium, Johnny Bench of the Cincinnati Reds breaks Yogi Berra's all-time home run record for catchers. He hits 2 home runs off Randy Jones in the Reds' 5-3 victory over the San Diego Padres. The first comes in the second inning and gives him 336 on his career and 306 as a catcher, breaking a tie he had shared with Berra. On June 3rd, the MLB player draft is held. Notable selections in the first round are Kelly Gruber, who'd go on to win a Gold Glove with the Toronto Blue Jays, who was drafted by the Cleveland Indians. The Montreal Expos take first baseman Terry Francona with a 22nd pick, and Darryl Strawberry by the New York Mets. June 4th, Jim Cott, recently acquired by the St. Louis Cardinals from the New York Yankees, pitches 10 shutout innings against the New York Mets. The Cardinals win despite a strong showing from Mets pitcher Pat Zachary and Neil Allen as well. The Cardinals get the 1-0 win thanks in part to extra innings home run by infielder Ken Reitz. June 20th, California Angels shortstop Freddie Patek hits 3 home runs and collects 7 RBIs in the Angels' 20-2 victory over the Boston Red Sox in Fenway Park. Look up Freddie Patek's career numbers and tell me how that makes sense when you guys get a chance. In a bizarre moment, also on June 20th, Detroit Tigers' Al Callens hits a slow roller off White Sox pitcher Ed Farmer. Instead of running towards first, Callens runs and attacks Farmer as revenge for being hit by a pitcher from Farmer the previous inning, which broke Callens' jaw and caused him to miss 21 games as a member of the KC Royals. An arrest warrant is issued for Callens, which forces him to miss the rest of the series. Callens is later suspended for a week by the AL. June 27th at Candlestick Park, Jerry Royce of the Los Angeles Dodgers no-hits the San Francisco Giants 8-0. A Bill Russell error and Jack Clark's first inning ground ball is the only base runner Royce allows. July 3rd, Minnesota Twins outfielder Ken Landreau ties an American League record in hitting 3 triples in a win over the Texas Rangers. Earlier this season, Landreau set a Twins record with a 31-game hitting streak, a record that still stands 35 years later. July 4th, Houston Astros pitcher Nolan Ryan strikes out Cesar Geronimo of the Cincinnati Reds to become the 4th Major League pitcher ever to record 3,000 strikeouts. And in something that can only happen in baseball, many of you know that Geronimo was also Bob Gibson's 3,000th strikeout victim 6 years earlier. Nolan Ryan ends up losing the game, giving up 6 runs in 4.1 innings. 4 1/3, I guess they would call that. July 6th, Philadelphia Phillies pitcher Steve Carlton becomes the Major League's left-handed strikeout king, fanning 7 Cardinals in an 8-3 Phillies win to bring his career total to 2,836. Mickey Lolich had held that record. I think maybe he made that record in 1975, if I recall. I only know that from looking at baseball cards. July 8th at Dodger Stadium, National League battles back to win its 9th consecutive All-Star game over the American League 4-2. Ken Griffey goes 2 for 3 with a solo home run to win MVP honors. That's Ken Griffey the Elder. July 25th, Mike Schmidt passes Del Ennis to become the franchise leader in home runs. That's the Phillies. July 30th, J.R. Richard, who had pitched wonderfully well in that All-Star game, suffers a stroke during his first attempt to pitch since being hospitalized for tests weeks earlier. Let's read that again because J.R. Richards a pretty important person in the 70s and early 80s. July 30th, Houston Astros pitcher J.R. Richards suffers a stroke during his first attempt to pitch since being hospitalized for tests weeks earlier. He would not play again. J.R. Richard could throw a baseball, and when we look at cards later on, we'll see just how good he was. August 4th, the Seattle Mariners fired Darryl Johnson and replaced him with Maury Wills. That was a shit show, if you don't mind me cursing a little bit. This is the first managerial change in franchise history for the Mariners. August 5th, Cubs rookie shortstop Steve Macko suffers a bad bruise in a collision with Pittsburgh's Bill Madlock in the first game of a doubleheader. A hurting Macko drives in a run with a double, is pinch run for by Rick Ruschel, he's a pitcher, and never plays another game in the majors. Doctors examining Macko diagnosed him with testicular cancer, and Macko would pass away in November 1981. Little known footnote in baseball history, but that's quite an interesting paragraph there. On August 11th, Reggie Jackson of the New York Yankees hits his 400th career home run off of Britt Burns of the Chicago White Sox. August 12th, nearly 50,000 fans cram into Tiger Stadium to watch the Tigers ace Mark Fidrich attempt a comeback. Boston won the game 5-2, and Fidrich's days in the majors would come to an end. On August 17th, the Detroit Tigers hold a ceremony in which they retire the number 6 in honor of former star Al Kaline. Kaline becomes the first player in Tigers history to have his uniform retired. Of course, we know he was elected to the Hall of Fame in January of that year. August 21st, Oakland A's owner Charlie Finley announces the sale of the team to Walter Haas Jr., a move that assures the team will stay in Oakland. Oil tycoon Marvin Davis had wanted to purchase the team and then move them to Denver. August 27th, the Philadelphia Phillies' Steve Carlton becomes the National League pitcher, the first National League pitcher to win 20 games in the season, combining with Tug McGraw to beat the Los Angeles Dodgers. Carlton would win 24 games while pitching 304 innings, the last major league player to throw more than 300 innings in a season. Let's read that sentence again. Carlton will win a National League high 24 games while pitching 304 innings. That's standard, not metric innings, and certainly not Canadian innings. The last Major League Baseball to throw more than 300 innings, pitcher to throw more than 300 innings in a season. September 8th, the Phillies sign free agent catcher Tim McCarver in what would be McCarver's final season as a pro. That, folks, is what we call a publicity stunt. Expanded rosters. McCarver, the reason we did that was so McCarver can play in 4 decades, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and of course the 80s. I believe he was signed right out of the booth, the broadcast booth, as they say. September 7th plus 3 days equals September 10th. Bill Gullickson strikes out 18, the most by a major league rookie pitcher. The Expos will beat the Cubs 4-2. September 13th, the Texas Rangers trade pitcher Sparky Lyle to the Philadelphia Phillies for a player to be named later. The player to be named later is pitcher Kevin Saucier. September 18th, Gary Ward again hit for that cycle. September 20th, Thurman Munson gets a plaque in Monument Park out there at Yankee Stadium. September 24th, the Braves reach the 1 million mark in attendance and marks the first time that every National League team has drawn at least 1 million fans for a season. September 25th, in an extra inning loss to the Cincinnati Reds, Ozzie Smith and Jerry Mumphrey each steal a base, making the Padres the first team ever with 3 players who stole more than 5 bases in a game. Gene Richard would lead the team with 61 swipes, and he was the other player of that triumvirate. Brian Kingman, on September 25th, loses his 20th game of the season. The loss made Kingman the first 20-game loser in the majors since Dolph Luque of the Cincinnati Reds in 1922. September 30th, the New York Mets defeat the Pittsburgh Pirates at Shea Stadium. Only 1,754 fans show up, making it the smallest game crowd ever to attend a game in Shea Stadium. October 1st, the Boston Red Sox fired Don Zimmer due to pressure from the fans, who never forgave Zimmer for the late season collapse in 1978, who led to the one-game playoff in which Bucky Dent hit that game-winning home run for the Yankees over the Green Monster. October 4th, in a 17-1 rout of the Minnesota Twins, Willie Wilson of the Kansas City Royals becomes the first Major League player ever to be credited with 700 at-bats in a single season and ends the year with 705 at-bats. He also sets the AL record for singles in a season with 184, eclipsing the mark Sam Rice set in 1925. Wilson also becomes only the second player in Major League history to collect 100 hits from each side of the plate, matching the feat accomplished by Gary Templeton in 1979. We'll revisit that in a few minutes, I believe. October 4th, Mike Schmidt hits a 2-run home run in the top of the 11th inning to give the Phillies a 6-4 win over the Montreal Expos at Olympic Stadium, clinching the National League East title. The home run is Schmidt's 48th of the season, breaking Eddie Matthews' single-season record for third baseman set in 1953. All right, October 5th, Ben Ogilvie, who was born in Panama of the Milwaukee Brewers, hits a home run off of A's Rick Langford, tying him with Reggie Jackson and making Ogilvie the first player not born in America to lead the AL in home runs. October 6th, after suffering through a 3-game sweep of the Los Angeles Dodgers the last 3 days, Joe Niekro wins his 20th game of the season to earn a win for the Astros in a 1-game playoff against the Dodgers. It is the Astros' first division title. October 9th, Kansas City Royals win Game 2 of the 1980 ALCS 3-2, but the game is remembered for the top of the 8th inning. With Willie Randolph on first with 2 outs, Bob Watson lines a double to left. The Yankees' third base coach, Mike Ferraro, waves Randolph home, and the Yankees gun him down at the plate. With a national television audience looking on, Yankees owner George Steinbrenner is shown in the stands on ABC game cameras shouting Ferraro's name at general manager Gene Michael. Steinbrenner ordered Yankee manager Dick Hauser to fire Ferraro on the spot right after the game, but Hauser refused. October 12th, the Phillies captured their first pennant since 1950 with a 10-inning, 8-7 win over the Houston Astros at the Astrodome in the 5th and final game of the NLCS. Each of the last 4 games was decided in extra innings. The Phillies, down by 3 runs to Nolan Ryan in the 8th inning, rally and go ahead on Gary Maddox's double in the 10th inning. What an incredible series that was. What an incredible game that was. And, of course, Carol Keating was Gary Maddox's biggest fan. October 21st, the Phillies win the World Championship, as we say. Game 6, Steve Carlton earns the win. The most memorable moment may be Tug McGraw on the mound jumping for joy as he earns the save after loading the bases with no outs. To me, the most memorable moment would be the Frank White's pop-up to the first base side of the field, Bob Boone gently catching it and then placing it in Pete Rose's glove for the putout. Mike Schmidt is the MVP of that darn World Championship Series, hitting with .381 with 2 home runs and 7 RBIs, while Willie Wilson is the GOAT, striking out a World Series record 12 times, including the final out with the bases loaded and hitting only 154. Of the original 16 Major League franchises from 1901, the Phillies were the last to win their first World Championship. October 22nd, Dave Winfield of the San Diego Padres is officially declared a free agent. We talked about Sadaharu O retiring with 868 home runs in the Japanese Baseball League. They call that the Nippon Major Leagues or whatever. November 12th, Steve Stone from the Orioles, who led the league with 25 victories, wins the Cy Young Award over Mike Norris of the Athletics. Don Zimmer is named manager of the Texas Rangers, becoming the 10th manager in the club's 9-year history. November 18th, Brad Golden is traded for himself. The New York Yankees trade Golden to Seattle for veteran Larry Milbourne and a player to be named later. In May 1981, Golden is sent back to the Yankees as the player to be named later, officially making Golden the first player since Harry Chiti to trade for himself. November 26th, the Phillies third baseman Mike Schmidt with a 286, 48/121 stat line is unanimous choice as the National League's most valuable player. December 12th, we're almost there, folks. Cardinals trade for Hall of Fame closer Raleigh Fingers, all-star catcher Ted Simmons, and pitcher Pete Vukovich. They go I'm sorry. The Seattle's trade future Hall of Fame closer. Boy, let me back that up. St. Louis Cardinals trade future Hall of Famer Raleigh Fingers, Ted Simmons, and Pete Vukovich to the Milwaukee Brewers for Dave LaPointe, Larry Sorensen, and David Green and Sixto Lezcano. Of course, Raleigh Fingers had just been traded to the Cardinals, I think, on December 8th. So crazy December for Raleigh. Was a Cardinal in name only. December 15th, Dave Winfield signs a 10-year, $16 million contract with the New York Yankees. That's 10 years, $16 million. That's $1.6 million a year. This makes Winfield the richest athlete in pro sports at the time and signals the end of Reggie Jackson's days in pinstripe. As George Steinbrenner informs Jackson, his free agent option will not be picked up after his current contract ends. December 20th, the Boston Red Sox missed the deadline to tender contracts to pending free agents. The blunder officially marks the end of Carlton Fisk and Fred Lynn as Red Sox as they become free agents. Lynn to the Angels and Fisk to the White Sox. Great job, Tom Yawkey. Congratulate you guys on celebrating your induction in the Hall of Fame by that massive boo-boo. June 1st of 1980, Rube Marquard, 93, Hall of Fame pitcher from 1908 to 1925, passed away. He had 201 wins and an NL record for career strikeouts by a left-hander at the time, 1,593. Posted 19 consecutive wins for the 1912 New York Giants, which was a modern Major League record. A little bit more about some things there. 1980 in the American League, both Dwayne Murphy and Ricky Henderson stole home in the first inning. The A's 6-3 win over the Kansas City Royals to tie a major league record originally set by the American League Minnesota Twins in '69 and the Cardinals in the National League by 1925. So that's 2 steals of home in the first inning. Cleveland Indians tied a major league record on June 1st after hitting 4 sacrifice flies in a single game, thanks to Ron Hassey, Dave Rosello, Gary Alexander, and Del Austin. Despite their selfless efforts, the Indians went on to lose 8-7. Over there in the National League, Ron LaFleur of the Montreal Expos stole his 62nd base on July 28th. That's crazy. During the 7th inning of a 5-4 win against the Cincinnati Reds, but was tagged out after stepping off the bag while trying to read the scoreboard that was noting the first stolen base occurrence 115 years earlier. So, in noting that was the first stolen base that had happened 115 years earlier, Ron LaFleur celebrated by getting tagged out after stepping off the base. Henry Aaron refused an award by baseball commissioner Bowie Kuhn, honoring him for his 715th home run in protest of Major League Baseball's treatment of retired black ball players. National Labor Relations Board ruled in favor of the umpires union after they demanded that the National League release its umpire evaluations, particularly those of the replacement officials who were retained after filling in for striking umps in 1979. Big deal. Pittsburgh Pirates' Omar Moreno stole his 70th base of the season on August 20th, becoming the first player in the 20th century with 3 consecutive 70 steal seasons. Moreno swiped 71 and 78, 77 and 79, and 96 in 1980. Lots of stats happening in there in the 1980 season. One of my favorite thing there is the amount of complete games pitched by Rick Langford was 28. That's 28 complete games by one baseball player in a season. I believe that in a National League, that would go to, let's see here. The National League was a lot less. So the National League, the most complete games was Steve Rogers with 14. So pretty incredible feat there by Rick Langford. Of course, Billy Martin would send his players out there to throw. Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the run through the season. We can talk about boring stats, but that doesn't mean anything because we didn't have war back then. But there is one little nugget we should know. On April 9th, 1980, George Foster of the Cincinnati Reds becomes the first Major League player to be credited with the newly formed game-winning RBI statistic with a 2-run homer off of Phil Niekro of the Atlanta Braves. So that's it. That's 1980 from baseball to culture. And we have one more thing to talk about. The number one movie in 1980 was, of course, The Empire Strikes Back, $209 million at the box office, which is probably $3 trillion in 2023/24 money. It was more than double 9 to 5, which came in second place with 103 million. Stir Crazy at 101 million. Of course, Paramount's Airplane, 83 million plus at the box office. A little bit of pop culture there. Pink Floyd released The Wall in December of 1979, but The Wall would sell a crap ton of records in 1980. So let's talk baseball cards. 1980 was I remember it well, baseball card wise. Of course, it's the last year of Topps' monopoly, and I'm sure the sky was falling back then, just as it is right now. But it's also a set I vividly remember collecting right out of the packs. And I think it was my first set that I put together. At least that's the story I continue to tell myself. And I think it is a woefully underrated set, both in the history of sports card collecting and just on its standalone aesthetics and beauty. The design is wonderful. Both front and back, and really has a lot of really cool things there. I'm going to read a little bit about the set from Beckett OPG, which I subscribe to and have a love-hate relationship with. So that's the last of the papers. I've read several dozen papers. This is the last 2 of them. Per Beckett, the cards in the 726 card set measure the standard size. In 1980, Topps released another set of the same size and number of cards as the previous 2 years. Distribution of these cards included 15-card wax packs as well as 42-card rack packs. The 15-card wax packs had a 25-cent SRP and came 36 packs to a box and 20 boxes to a case. A special experiment in 1980 was the issuance of a 28-card cello pack with a 59-cent SRP, which had a 3-pack of gum at the bottom, so no cards would be damaged. As with those sets, Topps again produced 66 double print cards in the set. They are noted by DP in the checkouts below. Do not Google DP, folks. I urge you. The player's name appears over the picture, and his position and team are found in a pennant design. Every card carries a facsimile autograph. Team cards feature a team checklist of players in the set on the back and the manager's name on the front. Cards 1 through 6 show highlights of the 1979 season. Cards 201 through 207 are league leaders, and cards 661 through 686 feature American and National League rookie future stars. 1 card for each team, showing 3 young prospects. Of course, the key rookie card in this set features rookie Ricky Henderson, and there's some other rookie cards such as Dan Quisenberry, Dave Stieb, and Rick Sutcliffe. Again, 726 cards. There's a couple errors in there as well. Not a big deal. 74 rookie cards, I believe. And the complete set, it says, per Beckett ranges from $150 to $400. Of course, that Ricky Henderson is a pretty big deal. Again, 74 rookies. Bam, here we go. All right, let's look at some cards. Here's some packaging. So talked about who was that? Shoot. Art Howe, I believe, was. Oh no, I lied to myself. Terry Poole was on the box of the wax box, 25 cents a pop. Remember pedaling down to the store about a mile and a half away. Mrs. Piazza made a wonderful hoagie. Mrs. Piazza was from Germany, and Mrs. Piazza was related to Michael Piazza, who became a Dodgers hitter later on, and a Hall of Famer, I'm told. So Margot Piazza from Germany, who married an Italian, would make me the most wonderful hoagies, and I would buy baseball cards from her. And for many years after my mother passed away, Mrs. Piazza would ask how my mother was doing. So after the first couple of times of saying she was no longer alive, I just smiled and waved. But thank you, Margot Piazza. She had a huge, huge impact on my hoagie eating and as well as my card collecting. I'm pretty sure that every card I got from the 1980 set, which I still have, I bought from her store. Wax packs, there were at least 5 different wrappers offering you various things like team checklists. We had the card killer lockers. I'm sure there were T-shirts and all sorts of fun stuff you could get from sending in a bunch of wrappers. On my screen there, we see a 39-cent cello pack, and there is an 80-card package you could also get, which featured all sorts of fun stuff, 80 cards and a collecting box. So that's that. The sell sheet, I have a copy of the sell sheet here. A lot of this stuff was from TCDB. It says Topps 1980 Baseball. Of course, it featured Rick Dempsey of the runner-ups and a left-hander pitching from the city of the Steel people. I'm not sure who that is. And Dave Parker swinging away. It says Catch the Fever. And then you could order as many cards and cases as you want. As we said about the design was wickedly, sneakily awesome. A couple banners featuring positions and teams, white border around, yellow piping inside, name at the top, facsimile autograph. This set featured a heck of a lot of action photos, really good action photos. I've got on my screen right now an example of an AL All-Star, which has a banner across the top in purple with pink lettering. This is AL All-Star. And then the NL All-Star has Mike Schmidt black banner with yellow lettering saying NL All-Star. Back of the cards were blue, a gorgeous blue. I'm not quite sure this blue had shown up on a card prior to this series, but it's one of the things I vividly remember. Player's name, boldly written across the top, team to the right, position to the left. The card number is encased in a little home plate icon. And, of course, we have career stats, games at bats, runs, hits, doubles, triples, home runs, RBIs, average, all the stuff we grew up with looking at players' stats before all the .OPSs and WA wars and all that fun stuff. So just great straight up stats. The vitals are underneath there with your height, weight, how you bat, how you throw, who signed you and when. Carl Yastrzemski, for example, was signed by Boston in 1950 prior to the draft. Acquired as a free agent 11/28/58, and he was born in Southampton, New York, of course, and where he lives now, Lighthouse Point, Florida, or where he lived in 1980. And then there's a nice little cartoon there, and below the cartoon is some trademark isms from Topps Chewing Gum Company. It says Carl won the AL Triple Crown and was the Loops MVP in 1967. Of course I knew that. All right, so let's get right on there. Right out of the bat, we have our highlights from the 1979 season. And boy, there's some doozies in there. I'm not sure how often it happened, but Carl Yastrzemski and Lou Brock both reached 3,000 hits during the 1979 season. The back of that card number 1, became the 14th and 15th member. Lou Brock of the St. Louis Cardinals and Carl Yastrzemski of the Boston Red Sox attained their 3,000th career hits in 1979. The retiring Brock finished with 3,023 lifetime safeties, while Yaz total stands at 3,009 hits as he enters the 1980 season. Pretty cool there. Now the cards 2 through 6 feature some more highlights. We have Willie McCovey. Let's see what Willie's was. I forgot. I got the book right next to me. 512th home run, sets a new career mark for NL lefties. Then Gary Templeton, we talked about how he had 100 hits from each side of the plate in 1979. Manny Mota, he is the all-time, at this point, substitute hitter, 145 career pinch hits for the Dodgers. Del Unser, another pinch hitter, a legendary pinch hitter in Philly, hit 3 consecutive pinch hit home runs in 1979, which is the new record. And Pete Rose, 10 seasons in a row. 10th season in a career with 200 or more hits. So that was pretty impressive as well. Moving on, team pictures. These along with the rookies and the league leaders are the only horizontal cards in the series. So there's no horizontal base cards or regular cards of players. I have the 1980 world champion Philadelphia Phillies in all their glory. Nice team photo there in front of the scoreboard. That scoreboard in Veterans Stadium. Backs of the cards would have a checklist, and they are in alphabetical order, not numerical order. So it has their card number, then a little checkbox, the player listed in alphabetical order, then their position, and then their uniform number, which is a nice little touch. I butchered a lot of the backs of these cards. Proudly, I would do a big X on the back when I was completely done. Regular checklists, we still use them back in the day because even though the Beckett Guide came out, we would still have our own little checklist. Now the checklists are rather pedestrian here in the cards. I've shown 1 through 121. Lime green, orange combo on the front, and a blue again on the back. The blue is awesome. The leader cards, folks. Wow. Let's just talk about the leaders. Dave Winfield and Don Baylor. Don Baylor had a heck of a year in 1979. MVP, of course. Dave Winfield looking all mutton chopped up there. Dave Kingman would be your home run leader in the NL. Gorman Thomas in the AL. 2 Negroes on the National League leaders. They tied for the league leadership, which is pretty darn special. And Mike Flanagan led the AL that year in victories. Batting leaders were Keith Hernandez in the National League and Fred Lynn in the American League. Omar Moreno, we talked about him winning the stolen base title, and Willie Wilson, we talked about him for the AL. Pitchers, right? So, again, strikeout leaders. Look at that card, J.R. Richard and Nolan Ryan. Boy, you talk about, they talk about the kids throwing heat these days, man. I don't care. Nobody wanted to face these guys back in the day. Nolan Ryan, legendary, but J.R. Richard was pretty darn intimidating on that mound. Big guy, big arm. And like Nolan Ryan, back of your head when you're batting, you're thinking, is this guy going to hit me or is he going to hit the catcher's mitt over the plate? You never really knew. Earned run average again, J.R. Richard and Ron Guidry finishing up a nice little run there with the Yankees. He would kind of peter out after that. Rookies, thank you to Topps for waking up and realizing how much you screwed up in 1979 by having black and white photos the rookies. They went back to color photos. I have the Reds future stars here, which featured Harry Spillman, Frank Pastore, and Art DeFreitas. And I have Art DeFreitas there, or DeFreitas, because they bit of an uncorrected error there. He's listed as outfielder or OF-B. It should have been first base, as it says on the back. The back of the cards, big names, positions, and just the regular sort of vital signs there. Let's talk about some of the milestone cards, right? Card 100 was Bench, Johnny Bench from the Reds. Card 200, Jim Rice. Card 300 was Ron Guidry. Card 400, Tom Seaver. Card 500, Reggie Jackson. Card 600, Rod Carew. And I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know what card number 700 was. I guess I can look that up right now, right? So give me a second. I will correct that error. I apologize for not putting that up there, but I'm sorry. Carew was 700. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I skipped somebody here. So 700 was Carew. 600, I believe, was Reggie. Yep. 500 would have been Tom Seaver. We talked about him. 400 would have been, still is, truth be told. George Foster was in there. So I skipped George Foster in my little graphic here. Apologies to everybody there. A lot of uncorrected errors in this set, but nothing too crazy, nothing outrageous like the year before with the Bump Wills card. I've got a couple here. You can see an example if you're watching John Wathan, kind of an ink variation there. And then a player that I really didn't care to remember their name. There was like an E asterisk by the copyright on the back of the card. Don't know what's going on there. Let's talk about Steve from Mars real quick. So 79 Tops, as we know, they were producing cards for other folks, including Burger King and then OPG. And then there's this Pepsi Cola one. Now, the front cards are eerily similar. The OPG cards look the same as the Tops. And then there's a Burger King set, which I think I just happen to have here as well. And then there's a Burger King regional set in Philadelphia. And then there is a national Burger King. Here's the regional Burger King, if you can see that there too. It looks a lot like the regular issue card from the front, but on the back, if you look on my graphic here, the backs of the cards, the bottom one, card 113, is the OPG. There's the Burger King card, which is card 15. There is the Pitch Hit and Run, which is a Burger King national distribution thing, has a red back, very interesting back. It's a lot different, but that's a Pitch Hit and Run Burger King. And then there's the Pepsi Cola one. So Steve Carlton appeared on at least the same card 4 times over, with the OPG and the regular Burger King and the regular Tops being the same. So this is 5 cards if you're counting. Then he had a national Pitch Hit and Run Burger King card. Then he had this Pepsi card. So 5 different cards, 5 different backs, some same fronts, but all the pictures were the same. So very interesting time. I want to thank Gary from up north across the border up there. He sent me a bunch of OPG cards and absolutely brilliant. So Gary, thank you for those. That was my first bunch of 80s. Let me get this thing off the ground here. Let's talk a little bit about a couple things here. First, I'm going to talk about what this guy does, right? Steve Yeager. Steve Yeager is the last card of the vintage baseball era produced by Topps in what we call the flagship set. So Steve Yeager is not Mr. Irrelevant. Steve Yeager holds a dear place in my heart as the final vintage card ever made. So thank you, Steve, for your service. Appreciate it. Maybe I'll send you a shirt if you want. So just recently, I've had this set collected and finished for 43 years. And it wasn't until within the last month or so that I've actually bindered it up. I have Mr. Yeager here on the back of the on the binder. And again, this holds a near and dear place to my heart. It's kind of, I hadn't bindered it. I have my 68 through 79 sets bindered for a long time. My 56 and 58 sets are now bindered, all that stuff. but it kind of that transition period where all my 80s sets back there, Topps, Donruss, Fleer, all in boxes and beyond, all that stuff. But my 80 set was always kind of a lone wolf that I would have off to the side. So I have it in binders. It was good to look at again. And again, most of these cards, if not all of these, were pack pulled by me. So thoroughly enjoy this. I don't care if it's worth 50 cents or $50,000. Such a good, fun set. I have at least a dozen Yaz cards. I love that Yaz card. So I have at least a dozen of those things floating around in the book of Yaz back there. But good times. Of course, I've spoken often about how 1981, everything changed, both in the distribution and manufacture of cards as well as our collecting habits. 80 kind of closes the book on the old ways. Another fun fact about 1980 is that I believe some weird percentage of cards, like close to 50% of the cards, feature a player with a mustache. Again, lots of great action shots. Get some of those cards, and if you have 80, take a look at the cards because so much fun. Not your typical spring training stuff. There's a lot of great photos in there, both taken in action and in interesting positions, not just in front of a palm tree at spring training. So 1980, awesome. Hope I did this justice for Bobby Baseball. And I don't know how far I can get into the 80s, but thanks for having me in your ears today. And let's get together sometime and have fun with our cards. Again, thanks for joining me this week on our journey back in time. If you have a comment or suggestion, perhaps you have another set you want me to take a look at, reach out to me at 70s Card Show on Twitter, that 70s Card Show at Gmail, or that 70s Card Show on YouTube. I have played Mango Safari on the back end and front end of the podcast. Hope you guys enjoy that. Enjoy collecting, and more importantly, enjoy your collection. If your collection lasts longer than 24 hours, please don't see a doctor. Thanks. Bye.